Next on the program is CrossViews. Today's edition takes us to the Northwest region where my colleague Ayujan Ashu will be moderating the topic Widowhood Rites, Culture or Torture. Widowhood rights are part of the cultural legacy of most tribal people in Cameroon. However, civil rights defenders are of the opinion that widowhood rights are fast shifting from culture to torture. Hello, John. You are delving into a cultural gray area here.
Good morning, Ebenezer. Accept greetings from the Northwest Regional Capital, Bamenda. You are right that the issue is quite sensitive and interesting. Reason why we have eminent personalities to examine the topic in the spirit of the slot CrossView. Professor Emeritus Paul Ukwi, sociologist, anthropologist, a familiar voice on our airwaves. Good morning, Prof. You are welcome to the program.
Good morning, and thanks for inviting me.
Mrs. Anne Stella Fomombot, CEO, Interfaith Vision Foundation, Civil and Participatory Rights Promoters. In fact, she is a missionary whose activities center around support to widows and orphans. It is our pleasure to welcome you to the program, Madam.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Prof, can you situate us on widowhood rights as a culture or a cultural legacy in the grass field of Cameroon?
The word widow is probably played to the background. You know, when you pay dowry for a young woman who becomes your wife, what are you doing? You're virtually purchasing her fertility and conferring on you the right to manage her fertility. The children she has are yours. And if you don't pay that dowry, the whole issue of paternity will not be conferred on you. Therefore, we have to look at marriage as a social institution which is fundamental for the survival of a given culture, of the survival of a clan, a lineage, or an entire ethnic polity. Therefore, in some cultures, when a woman dies, the widowhood is imposed on her just for a short period, probably the 3 days or the 1 year during which she will be subjected to a number of societal well-defined behavior.
And Prof, talking about this societal well-defined behavior concerning widowhood, what are some of them, especially within our context?
Basically, within the first 3 days, the widow is required sometimes to sleep on a bare floor and probably do no makeups again. She is virtually what the Bible describes as wearing the sackcloth to mourn the demise of her beloved husband. That husband is gone. But some cultures simply say that individual, when he married her, that individual obtained the right to manage her fertility.
Madam Fomumbot, you are an activist as concerns women and civil rights.
What Prof has said is true. It obtains in certain communities even up to today. But I am not for that in the sense that if we look at human rights, it is not because a woman has lost the husband that she has to go through that torture again. She already has the psychological pains. We need to comfort her rather than place her in a situation that brings in more torture and frustration. To mourn a husband does not necessarily require physical torture. But talking about having to sleep on the bed floor, on a terrible bed, or don't bathe, I think we are adding pains to injury.
But Prof, it is a culture.
Culture, we define a collective patrimony of a group consisting of a series of comportmental behavior. We will begin to ask ourselves the things that are imposed on a widow. Are they right? Are they justified? Are they humanly speaking acceptable? Widow rituals are spread throughout the whole world. Every human culture has its own way of mourning the deceased husband. And probably because we are what we are, we're seeing other new ways in which widowhood is celebrated, is that some cultures are adapting to it. Instead of sleeping on a bamboo bed or on a bare floor, now we have mats and probably a blanket. Instead of keeping the woman lonely, secluded during those 3 days, they are members of their social groups. If they were in CWA, they were in CWF, etc., they come to mourn with. These are new factors that are emerging to help us live and celebrate and probably bring psychological comfort to the widow.
We are talking here about rights that are defined by ancestors.
Yeah, definitely. If you go back 50 years back, it was much more difficult than it is today. During the burial of the Fawn of Com, everybody, including men and women, men were required to be half naked. And probably if you watch the TV, you would have found me half naked. That was the required behavioral pattern that was defined that day. Women technically were supposed also to be undressed right to below to the west, right? And the parliamentarian came there. She was dressed decently, but she made sure that her breasts were protected. That's an advantage. We didn't quarrel with that.
I remember far back in 1999 and 2 or 3 years prior to that, we had this HIV pandemic and many more husbands died than wives. And as usual, the death of the husbands will always be blamed on the wives. In order to have their property, we had cases of women who were actually asked to swear over the corpses of their husbands. We know cases of women who had to drink the water that was used to bathe the corpses of their husbands. We saw that, we experienced that, and the question was, were we going to sit quiet and allow this thing happen? So we started by educating the communities on the existence, the prevalence of HIV and AIDS as the main cause of the death of the men. You see, ironically, even a widow who was infected and eventually died was regarded as having paid for killing the husband. After the husband dies, the property of the husband is taken over by the family. Remember, the wife is also considered as part of the property. And in the line of Professor Queen's presentation, because the bride price has been paid on that woman, she belongs to the in-laws. So any other man can take over, especially if she is still young and procreative. What if the husband of this woman died of AIDS and this woman is probably infected? It means that any man who takes over the woman takes over that illness also, and he will in turn infect the other wives.
Provost will come in here.
I think it might be important for us to identify what these rituals and rites are. The woman in a patrilineal setup is not a member of that patrilineage. It is only the man and his children that belong to the lineage. So the woman is virtually a reproductive product
of the family.
To provide members of his lineage. So when she dies, and that the deceased had a brother, the brother has the right to inherit. Would you prefer that woman to go out and marry some other person, or would you prefer he stays within
the confines of the family?
Of the family. Because the brother can take over and still continue the reproductive process for the patrilineage.
Mrs. Fomumbo, you just talked about the inheritance of the widow by a brother or relative to the deceased husband.
I think that we should actually capture that word, if she is willing,
yes,
not if she is forced to. Right. Because this issue of widowhood is all around forcing women to do what they don't want. There was also the spiritual component where the death of somebody is regarded as the person transforming into the spiritual realm and still existing among the people. So you see that an in-law takes over the brother's wife and still has that high sense of fear and respect for his brother. He would even take care of the brother's children more than his, for fear of grieving the spirit of the late brother. Nowadays, materialism is the order. You inherit a woman, and your intention is not to take care of the woman and the children. You have a secret intention to inherit the man's property.
Now, let us not curse our culture and hang it. There are some times when the person who inherits the widow goes beyond the cultural norm because of the monetary system in which we are operating. In my culture, when you marry a woman, the first function you need to perform is to give her land. Holds that land intestate for our children. Now, what is happening that the people who are now inheriting widows take the land and sell it out.
That is it.
And therefore, the widow in a very precarious situation and also that of the children. This is when it's rather the abuse of the cultural norm by the people of the same lineage as the deceased. And I think this is what we need to address. Consequently, the people who may be in a position to move out of the family will be younger women, probably with or without kids. In that case, unless the land, and this is again, we're drifting into hot issue as with respect to should women own land. In the Northwest, women, their cultures don't give them the leeway to own land, but they will own land through their children. That land physically goes to the children.
Prof, the bottom line is that widowhood rites or rituals per se are not negative, but it is when they are rather abused.
I think so. The widow rights, we have to ask ourselves, why do those rights exist? I think that's where the question is.
Why?
The first 3 days of mourning is the widow who feels it much. This is a person he has lived with, and suddenly he disappeared. The culture expects that she should demonstrate a greater love for the person by performing certain acts, of which is not bathing for the next 3 days, means you are bathing, sleeping on the floor or on a bamboo bed, etc., and remaining for those 3 days. But remember, after a year or after, depending on how the culture defines the duration of the mourning, that there is another rite of purification.
Purify the woman.
Yeah, they will select a day during which the whole family comes together. They take the widow, the wash her, the oil her, and there is a whole feast, at least releasing her from that long period of mourning and giving her the right to be able to remarry. Not only remarry the successor, or even the capacity to be able to choose somebody other than.
Certain cultures will take the widow to extreme somewhere, and she will be required to be stark naked. Get into the stream, have other women bathe her, and then she's required to carry either a log of wood and move over a certain distance stark naked. That one I say terrible. I don't think it is good.
Why do you say it's not good? Because she is stark naked, that is
stark
bad.
Naked, that's a human right abuse.
No.
Only my husband.
No, listen,
only my husband should
see. Look, this woman has been purified.
My husband has the right to see my nakedness.
She's not ready to re-enter her sexual life. So you need to see the good.
Everybody?
For sure. You don't know where the potential husbands.
Is she analytical for
No, I'm speaking from the perspective of the culture. That by carrying, you take her to the stream, you wash her, she carries a log of wood naked. All the other women who are accompanying her are not naked, are they?
They are not.
Right. She is the only one, right? Yes. And she goes back to the compound. And in the process of doing so, she sees quite a lot of people. People who now see the goods.
And appreciate.
This is probably from the point of view of the culture, not from my own
anyway,
point
that
of
is
view.
true.
We will appreciate, this girl or this woman still has.
That practice should be revisited. It should be revisited. It shouldn't happen nowadays.
Okay, how do we do that? Let me propose something. If you want to revisit what you're saying, we take her to the stream, they're washed by. You dress up and beautify her, right?
Yes.
And she walks back to the village.
Majestically.
Right. And say, now, free.
I'm new.
Are there...
And if I may ask a question, Prof, what would happen if there is no stream in that community?
Yeah, where do the people get water?
From the tap. Nowadays we have tap water.
That is again where tradition
is being
that is the modification. You either take her to the tap
or her bathroom.
Or you bathe her
in her own bathroom.
No, it must be a place where
the basin of water probably behind
sink into the...
Okay. But that component of pouring water on her head or on her body must take place.
What about shaving the woman, madam?
It's not only shaving for all funerals. The shaving takes place after the 3 days of everybody. It's not only the widow.
I think it's more of making a choice. You know, one very important aspect of life today is the religious dimension of it. It has modified a lot of practices.
Yes.
There's this issue of bride price, huge bride price. You know, there are some families or some parents who think because they have educated their children up to the master's degree level or PhD, and you are a foreigner coming in to marry my daughter, you can't pay for all what I've spent on the child. The bride price of the child is 2 million francs. You have to produce other complements to that amount, like you have to give, instead of a goat, you give a cow. Instead of a chicken, you give maybe a goat. It is because of that huge amount that the man thinks he owns the woman and has the right to do anything he likes, and cannot, and even after the death of the man, the family thinks they have spent a lot on that woman, and so she has no right to go back. Sometimes, even if she doesn't have a child, she has to stay there because she's, after all, our...
The bride wealth that you pay simply signifies that you have a right to claim fatherhood on any children born of that woman.
Accept it.
That's number one. Number two, the quantity of gifts given is very, very heavy from patrilineal society and minimal in matrilineal society. In the patrilineal, to which I think you come from,
Yes.
the men's insecurity is granted to them by the amount of wealth they pay, and they feel comfortable. And there are even women, if you don't pay on them, they will not sit in your house. You know that, am I lying?
Yeah, to an extent.
Why? Why is that even women will insist that you pay?
But not the exorbitant amount.
What is considered as exorbitant?
So you draw a link between the bride wealth and the widowhood rights.
Yes. The link is that, remember, whatever I'm saying here...
The bride wealth, widow inheritance avoids the repayment of right home. But whoever marries a widow outside the lineage must repay what was paid by the deceased to the... If you are linking those, if you are linking that now that this woman has been purified, she's not ready to get married, she doesn't want to marry within the lineage, within the family, she wants to go outside. So the family of the deceased says, okay, we paid 1 cow, you are giving us 2. If you love her, you pay. Maybe from that angle.
I see that as an abuse. It is not compulsory that a widow must remarry.
Since we are dealing with the widow and you are brought in bride wealth,
yes.
We are saying now the widow has been purified, she is ready now to resume her sexual life, right?
Yes.
She can either stay and marry the brother of the deceased, or she goes out and marry. Now the family of the deceased says, okay, right, young woman, go and marry. But anyway, we paid 1 cow for you. This time we want 2.
Why 2? If I may ask.
Have you ever invested and you don't?
You married a woman, at the time you married her, she was just 25 years old or 20.
Yeah, now she's
very young.
Now she's 40.
She's 40 and you must have had children with her. It is even very wrong if you have children with that woman to ask for the bride price. What if she has children with the deceased?
Here is a widow. She has lost her husband. She has gone through all the other rites.
Yes.
Now she is purified and she wants to remarry outside. You bring in your bride wealth.
Yes, there are 2
now,
aspects.
The family of the deceased can keep her. And there will be no bride wealth discussions involved. Now she wants to marry elsewhere.
Good. Let me come in. There are situations or there are examples of widows who are being maltreated by the in-laws. And the father of that woman thinks that it is comfortable to take back my child or even to keep the child in my compound with the grandchildren, that's the children of the deceased. And because of the bride price, he's unable to take the daughter back because he is at this moment unable to pay back. The second aspect is that there are women who will not want to remarry but who are not comfortable living in that family for several reasons. She thinks she should gain her freedom by either buying a piece of land somewhere, build there and stay there, or go back to her home of origin. And because of that aspect of heavy bride price, her freedom is lost.
The father of a woman who wants to take back her daughter, we gave him the money, right?
Yes.
We just want him to bring it back.
What about the children? What about the children?
Culturally, the children remain in the family of the deceased. If the parents want total release of their daughter, they will have to give back the bride. Usually the family of the deceased will not ask if the woman moved. But the moment she attempts to marry another person, that one, the bride must be repaid.
The children too are an investment.
No, and are the dividends.
Okay. Okay, the dividend of the bride price. Good. If the children are a dividend of the bride price, if you are taking back your bride price, what about the dividend?
No, it belongs to the original investor.
Okay.
Who is the relatives of the deceased husband?
The question here is, who paid the bride price in the first place? Is it the deceased?
It's the family of the deceased. And why did he pay it? Is to be able to acquire the right of paternity over those kids.
Yeah,
and those kids belong to that group.
To me, as far as their children, it is not good to take back the bride price.
Mrs. Ann Stella from Onboard Widowhood Rituals.
It is more of torture and not culture, because most of those who still perform those rites are greedy, they're self-centered, they are jealous, they are wicked. They don't do that as performing a cultural rite. They do that as a form of torturing the woman. And we are still saying that there are still practices of inheriting widows, not because you want to take care of the widow and the children, but because you want to use that as an excuse to inherit the property, to seize the land and sell.
In 1960s, I visited one tribe, and in that tribe, the farm's wives were not required to carry any clothes. They had to go
naked.
All the time, stark naked. Today is no more. But it has not altered the significance and the meaning that those people wanted to give to the nakedness of the royal wife. So culture is the identity card of every group.
We are all agreed on the fact that culture is the identity of a people. However, cultural practices that are obnoxious should be revisited, revised. In widowhood, we say that the world is a changing world, and in order to modify the practices, we need certain measures to take. As a civil society organization activist, I would say that we need to mobilize the widows.
What Madam has described is that they're reconstituting that social group where they're banding themselves, they're creating a front to be able to reassert their rights. This is part of cultural dynamic. This is our cultural change. But what is fundamentally important is the protection of the widow by our existing law. So, my advice to the widow is they should attempt to reintegrate themselves into society.
Thanks very much, Professor Emeritus Orokwe, anthropologist, sociologist, and also thank you, Madam Ann Stella from Onboard, civil and human rights supporter, and especially with an inclination to protection of widows' rights.
By all accounts, that was a fascinating topic, John.
You can gather that it was a very interesting topic that we handled here with two eminent personalities. Thanks very much, and over to you.
Thank you very much indeed.